Sorry I'm late. Had a couple of things I had to address. It's really frustrating, but I don't think I should talk about it on YouTube. So I'm waiting for my Unity editor to load at the moment, and then we can start. So if you're tuning into this stream, you're probably watching or you're using our Metroidvania tutorial series, right? So today is just gonna be a chill session where I run through the project. First, the project wasn't created by me, but we're getting our views on that tutorial series. So then we were recently thinking about how we want to move forward the series, what kind of features do we want to add, and well, if you follow what I've done for the Vampire Survivor series, I've done a lot of revamps on the code base, right? So you probably want to expect a similar thing for the Metroidvania code base as well. The reason for the revamps is because when you code a game, right, the ideal scenario that you want to run into is that maybe you spend like the first 4 months, 6 months, or however long to set up the systems, and once the systems are up, you shouldn't have to touch your code a lot. And so that's the same idea that I'm going for the Metroidvania tutorial series as well. So you may find we may spend 1 or 2 parts revamping like some of the source code before we implement the bigger features, like for example NPC characters or pairing or different kinds of combat actions. So by improving the systems, we also make our code more robust. So combat, as you know, is a very complex thing. Why is it complex? Because when you talk about combat, you have a lot of different states that you have to manage. So like for example, if you have a basic combat interaction where you get attacked, and then your character will get knocked back, your character will be stunned, and your character, when your character is being hit, they cannot perform any action, right? So there are certain actions that or certain statuses that will block certain actions, and well, there's a lot of coding to do. But first I have to jump into the code base to see how the combat is done, and from there I should have some ideas as to how we can optimize the system. So once we improve upon all the existing systems, then we can move on and talk about adding new features. Because once the systems are up and the systems are stable, then adding new features will be very easy. So I'm still waiting for Unity to load up. So what else can we talk about? Well, we can talk about crypto as well, also if anyone's watching. So I used to think, I'm just riffing for now since Unity is still loading. I used to think crypto was a waste of power, because crypto takes so much power to sustain, right? You've probably heard of the news about how crypto is bad for the environment because well, it uses a lot of power, and because it uses a lot of power, it burns a lot of fossil fuels. It uses more energy than some small countries, which probably is true. Just because the news says it is doesn't mean it always is, but in this case here, I think it's true. So I used to think that, since we already have the banks to manage our money for us, why crypto, right? And let's just say that in the last couple of months, I've started to understand why crypto is necessary. Well, it's not just last couple of months, it's say the last, just if you follow what's happening in the last year or two, you probably will get an idea of why crypto might be important to us. But it also depends on, I guess, what kind of news you read and what kind of news you believe, right? Because with how things are nowadays, like you have news coming up from everywhere and you're not sure what news you should believe, because every piece of news has well, news is free, right? So the product of news is us. So the news is basically, you know, what people want you to think. So then you have different parties wanting to think different things. So you have different kinds of news. So crypto allows us to manage our finances in a way that's not regulated, because all money is in the banks can regulate us. So the idea behind crypto is that if you have some crypto and because it's decentralized, so no one can control, say, who you send money to, where you send money to, and all that stuff. So it's can get pretty dicey, like, because right now our financial system is centralized, which means that all our money is funneled through like a couple of levels. At least it's how I perceive it. Maybe it's just because I have a limited perspective on things. Anyway, Unity is up, so let's talk about the stuff that this stream is for instead of crypto and finance. Let me just get the windows up and working. So if you have any questions, please feel free to just type in the chat. I know the audience is going to be different from usual because usually I run Vampire Survivors coding streams, right? And now it's a bit different. The Unity window is up. So if you are here and you're just coming in to support, then I appreciate it as well. I don't know if anyone's watching at the moment. Let's look at the code, and we can see where and how we want to start this. So I'm trying to open up Visual Studio at the moment so that I can share my coding screen as well. And finally, we have the browser, which is pretty important as well. So once again, thanks for tuning in and sorry for the wait. Had to deal with some affairs that popped up like the last minute. Well, because if you can't tell, I was why I was talking about crypto, it's finance related. It's scary when you try to send money and then your money gets frozen. You know, it's not really scary. It's just annoying. You know. And then there you see the benefit of crypto, right? That, you know, your money can't just randomly get frozen for like no reason, and then you have to go through, like, go and file some crap to go and get your money back. It's pretty crazy, man. And such a waste of time as well, you know. I'd rather be here talking about code and not deal with like the system and customer service thing just for like a couple of $100. Such a waste of time. Okay, so what we have here in the Metroidvania series, I'm actually not very familiar with what we have here, so I'm just gonna look through the code and we'll see what are things that we can do to improve upon the code base. So one thing that I noticed about the Metroidvania series, if you've noticed on our YouTube stream, we released a lot of videos, bug fixing stuff. So this system is definitely a lot less robust than our Vampire Survivor series. So like I opened the project and right away I'm hit with a couple of null reference exceptions. So we've got to look at these things and I've got to think about whether we can address them in the new part or whether I should address them as like a 0.5 or 0.75 video. So the input button here is not set up. Why would that be? Because so we have bug fixes here. Input button interact. What's up?
You say that it's hard and you swear that you tried, but I still feel alone on my own almost all of the time. 'Cause it's up and it's down and you're in and you're out. Look where you got me.
Input button. Why don't we have an interact key? Gotta check out the blog and search for the. Okay. Interact. Hi, yes, I remember you. I'm glad you graduated, and I hope our series helped you. So we are gonna pump a little bit of steroids. I hope I don't get banned for saying steroids. I'm gonna pump a bit of steroids into this project. Just like we did for the Vampire Survivors series. Can you imagine if I say it's steroids, I'm gonna pump steroids into our code base and I get banned on YouTube? That would be pretty funny, right? So the interact button, gosh, I'm not sure where the interact button is, what button is supposed to be. Red button down. Do you recall what the interact button is supposed to be? Like, what is it, spacebar or is it something else? Because there is no interact button here, and I think there is supposed to be one somewhere. Like, there is a debug, there is a bunch of stuff, but there isn't any there isn't an interact button. Oh yeah, you can send your project to, you can do it. Do you have my contact? Ah, alright. Yeah, I can check it out. That's great. I'm happy that you finished your project and I graduated. I hope that it's been a good experience for you. Do you recall where this what this interact action is binded to? It's bound to? Because I don't remember what button it's bound to. It's under the bench script. Yeah. Updating map and save system. Bench. Saving bench. Oh, interact is F. There we go. So I think all the settings are gone. Gosh. This is a problem. Why do we not have the settings? Project. Doesn't make sense. Dash, jump, submit. Huh, why do we have? Let me try and roll back the project. Maybe that will help because maybe the files are different. So you can see the problems that we have with this project, right? Like the Vampire Survivors project was so robust. You just had to load it anywhere and it works. And this one, you know, it's kind of like a little all over the place. There are buttons there that I don't know where it came from. Well, hey, as long as your code works, that's the important thing. If your code works, it gets you the grade, or it gives you a product to sell. You know, you'd be surprised at how often you get code that's spaghetti outside. So if you see a project that's rushed, so like you play games, right? Like you have say Cyberpunk or you have Mass Effect, and then these two games are very buggy, right? So if they're buggy, can you imagine the amount of spaghetti that must be inside? Sometimes it's just rushed and you have no time to properly build up a system, and then you just gotta Frankenstein something together, and then you end up with code that's a mess. Can a system like transforming weapons in Bloodborne be implemented in our 2D game? Yes. But whether it's how long it takes for us to do it is a different thing, because building the tutorial is gonna be a challenge. Like I mean, figuring our system, we can probably do it in say give me 2 streams. I can probably do it, but we have to have a system serve as the basis first. If the system isn't there, then it's gonna be difficult, because when you build a lot of features, right, and you build the features on the code base that is not very strong, then you're gonna get a lot of bugs. That's why in Vampire Survivors I revamped like a bunch of the code. It's to make it so that when we build stuff, it's very stable, and it's not only stable, it's very extensible. If you understand what I mean. Like if you code your features on a stable base, it's gonna be a lot easier to do it and a lot more stable. yeah, the modularity is something that if you, so I have a friend who works in the company is it's Paradox. So Paradox made Magica. Paradox makes a whole bunch of other games, and because I was playing City Skylines for a while, and I asked him about the game, and he says that they built the game like 8 years ago or 9 years ago, and they've never touched the code for a long time, just because their code base is so robust. Like for a long time, they released like over the last 10 years, they released like 8 expansions, 9 expansions. And then for their expansions, because their code base is done so well, they rarely have to go into the code, they just gotta add new scriptable objects. And they can package the entire product as an expansion and sell it. So he said that the most expensive part of making the game was creating the systems. And once everything was done, and because it's so modular, right, it's very easy to create new content to it. So if a game is well built, then it's gonna be really easy to make expansions, which is why you see so many of them, right? And here I'm trying to figure out where the controls is supposed to go. So I wrote back my project, but the controls still seem to be wrong. Maybe I have to go through the entire project to set the controls then. This is, I guess, pretty awful. Gosh, where do these debug controls come from? Okay, I'll just go through the entire series then. We've actually had quite a few comments on this series about it being pretty difficult to follow and all that stuff, so starting to see where it's coming from. You just check for me. So we have the jump button. I think that's set, right? Jump button is the space bar. Let me just roll my code forward again. So we're just gonna run through the controls one by one. I'm gonna check the article and just cross-reference that with the controls that we have over here. So we have a jump button. So jump is set, and then we have horizontal and vertical, right? Those are set as well. Let me just set the interact button. Let me just replace one of these debug buttons. Enable debug button. Interact. And this will be key or mouse button. So by setting an interact action, this should fix the error here, right? Sure thing. Let me adjust the background music. Enable debug button 1 is not set up. Where is this? I think I'm starting to see where this is coming from. So there is a Unity render pipeline, debug manager actions, and they have debug button 1, and I think it's overriding my controls.
said, let's take it slow. Heart sets another tone, and I hate getting vulnerable, but you can have my whole soul. And we're not holding back any hesitancies we had. You hold the key and I'm on track. You're deadly to me and that's that. Hard to say it, but that's where I'm at. We're burning the rubber and biting the dust. There's nothing to it, I'm starting to feel the rush. Starting to feel the right. Now we're in overdrive, overdrive, overdrive. Now we're in overdrive, overdrive. Second gear into overdrive, overdrive, overdrive.
It's always nice to hear that our tutorials help. Thanks for following us, Ethan. So the Metroidvania series is a little hard to follow. I'm having some problems with it right now at the moment. With the setup of the render pipeline. So what's happening here is that I am looking at the code base to see how we can improve upon it. But then when I first download the project, the render pipeline controls are overriding my default ones, which of course is not a good thing. Graphics settings. I don't think I'm using any render guide. Oh, we're using URP. Look for any debug related settings and disable them if possible. Let me just reopen my scene then. And so if you're using the render pipeline, I'm not going to change it, but gotta disable the debug settings. It's a little ridiculous that it's just causing so many errors here. Maybe I should just reopen the project, right? Just delete and re-clone the project. And we'll see if we have the same issue after doing that. So the reason why I'm spending so much time on these errors is because often when I see my students code, right, they see errors, but if the errors are if they can ignore the errors, they will do it. But I recommend not ignoring the errors because they will snowball and eventually they will cause a bug that you cannot fix without addressing the error. So whenever I see an error, in my code, my first instinct would be to understand what the error is, and then to fix the error. I think that's extremely important. So now I can't remove the project. Load again. Hopefully we don't get the same issue. Might be a little bit of a pipe dream. Think that the same problem won't occur, but okay. I think the project doesn't. Do I find it difficult to work on so many games at the same time? If my only job was to work on games, then I don't think it would be a problem. But I have a bunch of things to do. I have classes to teach, and like the Vampire Survivors series, right? If I was doing that full time, I probably can get out one part in maybe one part in 2 weeks or less. But then because with the teaching and with other projects that I have, it's that's why it's taking so long. But I don't think it's challenging to work on multiple games at the same time because the concepts are the same. So the biggest challenge is time, finding the time to create the content and to the coding itself is not tough. But the time management portion is tough. And it's difficult as well to find people who can stream like I do, and cause I write code in a very specific way, and it's difficult to. It's not to say that the other people who worked on this series they couldn't code, but they code a little different. They don't code it as robustly as I would like, which is why I'm deciding to just jump in and just look at the code so I can set the direction for how the code is supposed to be done. Because once I set some rules for how the code is supposed to be done, and it helps to get the code to a certain level of quality. But the drawback to coding like that also is that sometimes it's hard to explain as well. Like for example, with part 15, it was so tough to put into words that like how and why certain things are coded the way they are. You have to go and look at the code yourself. So some things are very tested and it's very hard to express. And the project doesn't support the new input system. So you will have to shift things around if you want to use the new input system with the project. I think that the traditional input system works pretty okay. For the most part anyway. Okay, let's try getting this project running again. So the difficulty with doing tutorials, right, is that say if I spend say 4 hours coding, I have to spend like 8 hours, 10 hours creating the content for that explains like the 4 hours of work. I think that's the tough part as well. Like if you were just to code straight up, it's a lot easier, but then I think just running streams and teaching and explaining code, it helps. helps me become a better programmer as well, because when I explain code, I have to re-evaluate my own logic, and sometimes when you re-evaluate your own logic, you see your own shortcomings as a coder as well, and then that helps you to make things more efficient over time. So I can't say that this is without benefit to me. This is it's good for me as well. I think it applies to any subject though. Like if you teach anything, you will always get better at the subject that you are teaching, just because as you are teaching, just the act of teaching itself will require that you reassess the way you do things, and you have to have a certain level of understanding to be able to explain things in a way that people who don't know the subject can. And also, for the longest time, I did think about making my own games, but I have this problem where if I do something, I want it to be perfect, and then like I just never get started. I just keep getting stuck on the concept stage. So then I think doing tutorials is it's a lot better for me, because it gives a very clear target as to like where you are and where you want to go to. So then it helps me to solve my indecisiveness, my perfectionist attitude. Like if I wasn't doing a tutorial, sometimes you'll see me spending 2 hours, 3 hours staring at a piece of code, right? And I know how to fix it, but I feel like the fix is not good enough because the system is not robust enough. And then I'll just spend like an hour, 2 hours looking at it. So on stream, I can't do that, right? On stream, I have to strike a balance. Otherwise, you'll just see me not talking for 3 hours, and it's not exactly a good thing. So we are still recompiling the project. Hopefully after this, our input system gets fixed, and we don't have to change anything big in our project. Hey, you know what? While we're waiting for the project to recompile, I'm gonna get myself a cup of tea. Very good. 10 minutes. Hi, Black Tiger. So the project has reloaded. Let's see where this leaves us. We still have the extra access. Yeah, we still have the same thing. This makes no sense, man. Let me see if removing the URP module fixes this issue. Can't believe we are spending this stream just waiting for Unity to remove stuff. I guess if you're watching this stream, then you can drop any questions you have about game development on the chat, because while I'm waiting, I will talk. And if you have questions, then now will be a pretty good time to get a professional opinion on things like, for example, how to code certain systems in your game, or how to, let's say if you have questions about school or about, say, interviews, getting jobs, I won't be able to help you much because I haven't worked a job for a long time. All the jobs I've done were by referral. So if you have interviews, then that may be a little challenging for me to help you. But otherwise, if it's about coding or about games, I think I should be able to give a pretty decent response to your questions. So removing URP, let's see if this solves the issue. Nope, doesn't solve the issue. Another option we have is, oh wait, removing URP breaks everything. I'm gonna try and download the project on Patreon. I think that let's start from the Patreon project files. That might be helpful. Just give me a moment, yeah, while I get the project files from somewhere else. Hi, Naim. So for the last 2 hours, I'm trying to get the project to work. So we are not off to a good start, but I think once we get everything going, then things will get better. So let's see where this gets us. I hope you're enjoying the series so far at part 5. And if I were to take a guess, I'm assuming that you are using the project for your school, right? How hard would adding online co-op be to Vampire Survivors? Well, it's not very difficult, but we might have to wait for Unity 6 because right now Unity. So if you okay, let me just pull up Notepad to explain how online works. So when you code an online game, there are a couple of things that you have to address. And so you have to, so the most important concept you have to address when you work with online games is the concept of replication. So what replication is essentially when you are playing a game online, you have two computers and both computers. So let me just turn down the volume, the music. So when you're building a game that's online, the most important concept that you have to understand is replication. Replication is basically how the two computers communicate to synchronize the game state. So one example of replication will be, so if you're playing a game and the two players that are playing, or however many players that are playing, have to have the same game state, right? For that to happen, you will need to decide which game objects to replicate, and then which game objects to not. So for example, things that you don't replicate may be, for example, like props that do not affect gameplay. So then, for example, let's say if you have flower pots lying around and if you shoot someone in the map, then you see if it hits the flower pot and the flower pot will burst, but it doesn't change the trajectory of your bullets, for example. Then these props don't have to be replicated, or just things that are physics, like for example grass, the swaying of the grass, or say particle effects, say like background effects, like say leaves or rain. So effects that do not affect gameplay, you don't have to replicate them. And then what things you have to replicate are things that affect gameplay. So for example, number of enemies on the screen, the stats of each of the enemies, the health, and all that stuff. So everything gameplay related. Everything gameplay related, say enemy states, player states, say items on the ground. So what to replicate and what not to replicate affects. So for example, if you play certain online games, you will find that say if you play Diablo, if you kill the boss, you last hit the boss, right? You will get some items that your other players don't see. This is because these items are spawned on your computer, but they're not replicated over the network. So then the job of replication is something that you have to think of, or the idea of replication. So in your code, you have to explicitly list out which are the things that are replicated, which are the things that are not. And then you will have to also code. You also have to write code for both the host and the client. So then if let's say you have a game where, so I don't know how the new Unity 6 multiplayer feature works, and I don't know how the current multiplayer system works, because you have to understand how that works first, and then you understand how the hosting and the client works. So what the host does is the host manages important events in the game. So for example, let's say whenever an enemy damages you, if it's important, it's supposed to be replicated to all the clients. Then depending on how your game is designed, you may want the host to handle that. So let's say teleportation, damage, any kind of movement. If it's important, you may want your host to handle the movement, the damage, and all the important gameplay events. So then you have to think about like which are the codes that are executed on the client and which are the codes are executed on the host. So for example, your player stats, your player movement, all these scripts may only run on the host. And then in your client copy, right, what the client copy is doing is just updating your game object's position. So then you don't have to run the processing for, let's say, damage reduction, damage, or like weapon firing, weapon cooldown, all these things handled by the host. So then you have to figure out what codes go to the host, what codes go to the client. And once you figure out all of these things, you have to then map this to an existing framework. So Unity 6 is providing a new multiplayer framework. Like 10 years ago, Unity had a very basic multiplayer framework, which I thought was pretty good. It was working, and I managed to code something from it. Then they scrapped it. I don't know what reason. I don't know what was the reason they scrapped it. Then after they scrapped it, there was a third-party multiplayer software. I think it's called Proton. Not wrong. And now if you have multiplayer on Unity, it's all coded on Proton. And then Unity 6, they're releasing a new module that does the hosting and everything for you. So I'm not sure how this affects the concept of replication or the concept of the host and the client. But I have to go and see their multiplayer module when it comes out. Then I can give you a more solid answer. But I hope that this question, like me explaining replication and the host and the client, helps to give you a clearer picture of how everything works. Because when you code multiplayer games, no matter how simple the system, I don't think it's something that you can go around, because you always have to decide how objects replicate and where and who manages like the states of the objects, the important objects of the game. Hope that answers your question. I haven't heard of the series Kingdom of Two Crowns, but if it is nice, I can check it out. Yeah, I do have this problem where I find certain things not that hard, but it gets easier once you've tried it and you get the concept of it. But well, you just have to, maybe I can create a multiplayer tutorial like somewhere along the line, maybe for Vampire Survivors. And then once you give it a try, maybe a year, 2 years down the road, and you give it a try, and then you will have the same thoughts as me. Oh, it's not very complicated. It's just you gotta understand what the moving parts are. So what I did was I created Pong on Unity like 10 years ago, and I was like, oh, this is how it works. So previously I was using Unreal Engine 3, and believe it or not, they actually have multiplayer features baked into the engine. So then you could label certain functions as running only on the host or running only on the client. And I never understood what these functions meant or what they did. But when I tried building a multiplayer game on Unity, that was when I understood all of these concepts. So sometimes you just need some doing, just need to give it a try. You make a series similar to how to make a similar horror game like Nosferatu or you haven't played the game, sorry. But I've played, the only horror games I've played are Resident Evil. What else? There are some very old DS games where I've played as well. Horror. What else is horror? Well, you can argue that Halo is horror as well, right? There was one level that was so creepy, like the first Halo game, where the flood came out. That was horror, man. Like the flood levels were horror. The Witcher had some horror elements as well. Witcher 3. There was an island where like it's just a tower, and then there was a lot of just ghosts inside. That was creepy as well. Unity currently does not have inbuilt multiplayer support. It has it has a third-party module that you use to build multiplayer components. So they used to have one, but I'm not sure why they removed it. Like, it was there and then it was gone like 3 years later. They had a multiplayer module, they removed it, I think 2018. 2015 I tried, they had a multiplayer module. They scrapped it and then now they're bringing it back. 2015 was a very different time because if you've played games back in the early 2000s, right? Every game that you played that has multiplayers, they would have to, when you create a multiplayer lobby, you will have to decide who's the host, who's the client. But nowadays, all the games, they are providing hosting support. So which means that if you build the game, like for example Dota 2, right? Or I haven't played Valorant or like all these other mobile games, but like Dota 1 was based on a client host model, right? So when you have 10 players, then you have one player that's the host. In Dota 2, you don't have the host, right? The host is provided by the application itself. So Unity 6, I think, is trying to provide the same feature. That's why they are overhauling their multiplayer system. So let me just show you all the progress. Spending the whole day loading projects, man. Today is not a good day. I'm a very impatient person, so whenever I'm looking at, I'm just boiling right now, you know, I'm just not showing it. Just boiling now because it's taking so long to load. And the only thing that is keeping me from blowing my top is because I'm on stream and I want to keep a level of decorum. I hope this works, the input system. Oh, fantastic, this works. So I'm gonna review the code here. Finally, after 1.5 hours. Sorry, after 1 hour, let's get this to work. The game actually feels pretty good, huh? Like the combat feels pretty. I mean, there's feedback, which is great. This feels a little janky, you know, like when you pick up items and stuff. See that? The heart is still there. Of course, particle effects as well, right? Like I'm particular with how particle effects are done, and I think that could have been done better. Yes, this live stream is saved, but I haven't done much for the past 2 hours, so it's safe provided that YouTube doesn't region lock it, because I'm using music that's supposed to be copyright free, but for some reason sometimes YouTube bans them. That's the reason why I remove ads on this stream, because you know, like anyway, if I enable ads, it's just gonna go to the I'm not gonna be able to monetize it anyway. And ad-free experiences are always better as well, right? So I think we have a couple of problems here with the UI. First thing is, well, fixing the UI here, right? See that? Let me just note down all the potential issues that we might have. I'm gonna get a piece of paper, write down all these notes that I have, and then this should give us the direction for part 11. So I'll be right back. What are some of my favorite games? I think it changes. My favorite games have changed over the years. Hollow Knight was great. I started off playing Final Fantasy, the old ones, when I was like really young. like 6, 7, sorry, 9 was my first Final Fantasy. And I played Resident Evil, I played Metal Gear, and I think those were great games. But as I got older, I lost interest in story-based games because they take a lot of time. So lately, my favorite games have been just the more obscure ones. You know, I've played Street Fighter quite a bit. I've played City Builders. Like now, I play games about stories now because I think stories are a little too much. But Telltale games are nice. I think there are a lot of great games now. It's not like it's not like 20 years ago when you only had a few companies making good games, right? Like great games are everywhere now. You have I'm sure that there is a lot of appeal in harder games like Elden Ring or Dark Souls. I just haven't had patience to learn them and understand them. So it's a great time to be a gamer. Maybe as a game developer, not so great time because it's a lot of competition. Sure thing, I'll give it a. Is that a RPG, story-based game? I shouldn't say story-based, right? Story-driven. It's more appropriate term. Noted. I will check it out. Probably only the trailer if I'll be honest with you, because I don't have the time. Like I'll be happy if I can play like 1 or 2 new games a year, you know. Mute the audio. Maybe let's start from the player. Let's start from the player and see what we can do to improve on the player character. So we have, how do we get from the first level to a different level? Cast and heal. Which button is cast heal? Cast and heal, that's mouse 1. Cast spell is
Three, two, one, go!
think the enemies need a little bit of improvement as well. Like when they die, it's a little glitchy. It's like the bat. When the bat dies, for example, it seems to work a little glitchy. Get it back when it dies. See that? Oh, it's just stunned. It's not dead. So what? Why is it flying like halfway across the screen? Can you ask about my income? So income wise, I'm doing pretty okay. So teaching pays pretty well. The Patreon side of the making YouTube content and making Patreon content, that one is it's on the low side, if I'll be honest with you, because I have interns who are helping me with content creation, and the money that I'm getting is not sufficient to cover the cost of hiring my interns. So we do have to think about what we can do and how we can improve upon, like how do we appeal to a larger audience, something that would be important for us. So it's an important question for us to answer, so that we can get more views and can get more patrons, so that then that translates into us having more money to create more content. So all my income comes from doing things outside of YouTube actually. The YouTubing hasn't been very productive for me. Hope that answers your question. But starting your own thing is always harder than just working for someone else, right? Like, because you gotta figure out what value you provide to the people who you're providing the service for. I don't even know how we can get to the next level. Are we supposed to travel to different maps? What's going on here? Is this the boss?
Taking the time to get your head straight. I'll be waiting for you, 'cause you know that I love you either way.
I'm thinking for starters, maybe I can just do a couple of special effects for the character, and then I can get a better idea of where to move this. I mean, there is content for it, you know, but I think there's a lot of ways we can improve upon the combat system. Then the question becomes like, which are the things I want to touch up? So we have 3 caves over here, we have 1 cave here. Fall over to the other cave. This is cave number 3. And then you have a boss at the back of the wall there trying to do stuff to you. Well, cave number 2. Where is cave number 2? Oh, this is cave number 2, right? There we go. Ah, okay. Tap cast Q while holding up. If I restart the game, do I restart these as well? How do you make combo attack? Actually, as for combo attacks, I do have a project, because we've tried to make a beat 'em up before, and I do have the project files for that. Combo attacks are complex because for combos to work, you have to first determine what kind of combos you want. So like Street Fighter combos are different from God of War combos. So Street Fighter combos are combos where when you get hit by one attack, and you can continue landing other attacks on the opponent, because the opponent will not be able to do anything about it because they're under hit stun. That's one form of combo. The other form of comboing is just when you press the same button multiple times, it gives you different attacks, right? So for that, you will have to have different states, and you will have to create a system that allows you to create different attacks, and then you can assign these attacks to like different sequences. We do have a sample, but I've got to think about how to present it. So my game actually saves. So, okay, let's go to main menu again. So I'm writing the list of things that I want to add to the series. Add particle effects. What else? What else do we want to do? Save system. Having multiple slots.
I've wondered what I could become if I believed in me. I've realized that I just have to
Let me just check whether the UI is responsive over here.
chase my dreams.
Ah, the UI is responsive over here. There we go. Okay, not really, because it's not vertically responsive. Parry is a must. How Hollow Knight has parry? I don't remember it having parry, you know. I think it has a... Does it have parry? It has a clash, right? So if the enemy attacks at the same time as you, I think there is a clash. Is that what you mean by the parry? I think for starters, what I'm thinking of is just... What I'm thinking of for starters is just to have a way to save data. What is this? Maybe just for today, I'm just gonna create a couple of particle effects for this series. I think that probably is the best use of my time for today. But before I do that, I'm just gonna try and fit the project files for part 10 into our main repository. I was planning to make some particle effect videos because I'm sorry guys, because particle effect videos they increase the number of views that I get. Because for the mainline tutorial series, every video that we make has lesser and lesser views just because people don't follow that deep, right? So for example, if you follow part 7 and you get everything that you need, then you stop there. Whereas for particle effect videos or videos that have more generalized instructions, it's easier to have more people using them because you don't have there is no barrier to entry. So that's what you mean by parry, right? So when the blades clash, then you avoid damage, and that's parry. Yeah, that definitely can be done. let me just add some particle effects to add a little more flavor to the game. And then we can move on from there. Let me just retrofit Part10 files into our game. Small game only has 3 inputs. They are able to make a game with a lot of complexity and depth within those limitations. Oh, sounds like it's a very well designed game. I've always been talking about how when you build a game, it has to have as few mechanics as possible with as many dynamics as possible. That's what makes a good game. So if you have to learn very few things in the game, but then the game has a lot of, the more you play, the more you discover, right? That's what makes a great game. So if a game is has simple controls, but then you find that there are like a lot of ways to use the controls, or if there's a lot of skill involved, like Street Fighter is not a very simple game, right? But why is it a great game? Because it's complex, but then there is so much more complexity when you start playing the game. Like you just have to learn how to do combos, and then how to make some special moves, and the rest of it is just, it's like so many levels, you know. So the more, like, you can play for like 4-5 years of Street Fighter and you can still learn things from the game that you never knew before. I think that's what makes a great game, and your game sounds like that as well because it has very few inputs. But it seems like there is a lot to discover, right? Once you start playing the game, there is a lot to learn, and you always feel like there is something new to discover in the game. Okay, let me dump the project files here. Okay, let's see if this allows us to make use of the project now. So I moved all the files from the Part10 Patreon files all the way here. Let's open the project, and once it starts working, I can start creating some content for it. And now we wait. Be right back in 5 minutes.
comes to you, I'm addicted to you. Why do I always find myself right back at you? You make a fool of me. I no longer wanna feel, 'cause I know I don't need you. You're no good for me. I don't wanna feel, 'cause I know you're no good for me. Oh no. When you stand behind me, baby, I never wanna let you go. I can be everything you ever needed. And I can't see, and I can't breathe. I don't want your body if I can have your soul. It's like you just don't know what's going on between me and you. Can you be so blind? Nobody, 'cause this feeling, when there's not more going on, I'm here to wake you up now. I no longer wanna feel, no I don't need you. You're no good for me. I don't wanna feel, 'cause I know you're no good for me. Oh no. When you stand behind me, baby, I never wanna let you go. I can be everything you ever needed. And I can't see, and I can't breathe. I don't want your body if I can have your soul.
Let me show you what's going on now. There is compilation errors, which I'm going to ignore.
I was checking out pictures of us. I never realized what I have lost. Now I know it, and it is so insane how I treated this like a game. You were my help when no one else were there to share affection. So let's try again. I'll go anywhere. Just send me your location to bring back when we were holding habit. Jokes and laughing.
Problem detected while importing the preset file. Let me just clean out the entire project and re-import the project.
I'm
So while waiting for this thing to load, let me just talk about particle effects, since it's been something I've been wanting to talk about for a while. So if you're looking to create particle effects, you will have to set up a couple of things. And one of the things that which camera am I using now? Using the screen share one. So if you want to make particle effects, right, the first thing I like to do is always to look for particle effect textures. Let me just show you what a particle effect texture is. So later on, when our project starts loading, then we can start working on the particle effects, just to spice everything up. And one of the few things I like to do when we are working with particle effects is always to find a particle sprite sheet, something like that. So you want to have a sprite sheet that has a couple of different patterns, and you want to make sure that they are black and white. So the reason they are black and white is because if something is black and white, then you can easily tint it. Tinting it means changing it to a different color. Only whites can be tinted. If you can tint, you can tint other colors as well, but it's gonna restrict you in terms of the kinds of colors that you can get. So with white, you can get any color, even black. I'll show you how to do that later. So what I'm gonna do here is just to grab this particle pack texture. And then later on, we are going to assemble this into a sprite sheet and then place it into our project. So let's just open up this pack first. And from here, we will get all the sprite sheets in a background like this, as well as in a PNG file. So from here, what I like to do, right, is I like to assemble everything into a sprite sheet. So let me just find a sprite sheet packer online. And transform this whole thing into a spreadsheet. So if you're watching a recording of this, if we happen to make a video out of this, which I'm planning to do, you will be able to find the link to this image at the bottom of this video. Let me clear the sprites over here. Doesn't make sense for me to keep the original sprites. I'm going to clear the sprites here. And I'll just add sprites. And then once you add the sprite, you will get a sprite sheet like that. So as far as possible, you will want to pack all of your sprites into a format like this. Padding should be 0. And you know, we want to downsize all the sprites as well, right? Is it possible for us to have 10? That's 5, 10. Oh, we can reorganize this stuff. Previously it was here, right? Just give me a moment to reorganize the shapes and everything. Let me just try re-adding sprites. So what I want to do is get the sprite to be in a 10 by 10 configuration. I'll explain to you why later. So I want the padding to be 0. That's the most important thing. Padding should be 0, so there are no lines between our sprites. And next thing we want to do is to have, instead of having 9 per row, I want to have 10 per row. So let's just slowly move. Let's move this guy out. know, move these guys in perhaps just to get a 10 by 10. It's 5, 5, 5, and then we have 5 here as well. It's perfect. Give me a while while I figure out how to sort sprites over here. What's going on here when I'm sorting sprites? Coordinates. So when I move this away, why does it change position? I don't quite understand how to use this. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna pack all the images into a sprite. I'm not gonna try and rearrange this anymore because it's so difficult to use. Just make sure your padding is set to 0. I will give out this image as a download later on when we make a video. So once this is done, we can download this as a PNG, and then we have to downsize the sprite. It's very important. So I'm just gonna call these particle textures. So under downloads, particle texture. I'm gonna call these Kenny particle textures because it's given to us by Kenny. And we will open this up as in Photoshop. Hi Gil, nice to see you. So the first thing I want to do is to downsize this particle texture. So this would be 2304. And this has 9 cells, right? So it's 2304 divided by 9. So one item is 256, which I think is a little bit large. But I think it's fine. And I also want to change the size to become 2560 by 2560. So I'm increasing the size a little bit, but I want to increase it towards the left. 2560, 2560. And I'm just gonna black out the rest of the background. So the reason why I'm making this image a 2560 by 2560 file is because this makes the image divisible by 2. Oh wait, no, it doesn't. Okay, it's fine, you know what, I'll just leave it as its original size. So ideally you want your particle textures or any texture file that you have to be of a power of 2. But our image is not a power of 2 anyway, so we will just make do with this particle texture that we have over here. So how do you calculate the size of each cell? Because there are 9 particles across and 9 particles vertically. We have 2306 divided by 9. This gives us 256 pixels per particle. So now that I have the effect, I'm just gonna save everything as a PNG file, and we are going to import this into Unity. So again, this will be called Kenny's particle textures. So why do we want to assemble a sprite sheet like that for our project? This is because firstly, if the image is black and white, it allows us to create a lot of different colors for effects. And second, because we have a lot of particle effects to choose from, we can create a lot of very nice effects just from this sprite sheet. You might not be able to see it now, but just with 81 effects, right? We have 9 and 9, so that's 80 effects since we have one blank. We can create so many different kinds of effects. So let me just show you how we can create a basic, when you hit something and then there is a a particle effect, right? So let me just show you how we can create that kind of effect. So we want to establish a couple of basic assets whenever we want to start creating particle effects. So I'm just gonna go to the art asset here, the art folder here, and I'm just gonna create a VFX folder in the Hollow Knight project, and I'll import this Kenny particle textures object. And of course, the first thing you want to do is to slice the sprite sheet. The pixel splitting doesn't matter for particle textures, just changes multiple. And then from here we can slice, and then by cell count this will be 9 columns and 9 rows, and perfectly we'll get all the lines here like this. Slice. So it's also very important when we set our images for us to set the alpha to be grayscale, and then alpha is transparency. Make sure that it's checked, and then when we apply this will give us images like this. So you will see, because it's grayscale, you will see the effects have a little black to them, which is totally fine. There is a very simple way to work around that, so we will look at that later. You can also choose, if you want the effects to be more pixelated, you can change the filter mode to point. Otherwise you can keep it as bilinear. So we have a bunch of sprites here, and this is perfect for us for creating particle effects, but we don't have enough just from having a sprite sheet like this, because we also need to create a couple of materials specifically for our VFX. So I'm just gonna drop the same material into the VFX folder just for convenience. The first material that you want to create is called the additive material. This works perfectly with the grayscale particle effect that we have. So it's going to be an additive particle, and I'm just going to go to particles and then standard unlit or standard surface. Standard surface affected by lighting. Standard unlit is not affected by lighting. So usually I'll use standard unlit. And then from here, we're using the URP system. So we seem to be missing some stuff here. Should be additive. And does this work for us? We don't have. Let me try this default particle. Okay, so the URP particle doesn't work for us. Applied systems. I guess we have to use URP then. Okay, there we go. So now this works. default particle. So if you're on URP, just assign a base map over here, and then when we create a particle effect here now, right? Let me just assign additive particle over here. And once you assign the material, you can go to texture sheet animation and assign a sprite to it, any sprite that you want. So we have a bunch of sprites over here. Let me just assign maybe this. And this is surface type here should be transparent, right? And then alpha is additive. Render face is front. Color mode is additive as well. This should work. So if I assign different particle sprites to it, you will see you get different effects, which I think is pretty cool. Everything is so bright though. And what else? We can adjust the coloring. Let me just play around with the particle effects. So you will see if the material is additive, right? It works a little different because when you have multiple objects that are stacking on top of each other, you will see it gets very bright. Whereas if I use the additive particle, or rather if I use the regular default particle, right? You see the colors don't really stack. So same for if I use default particle, or say URP, there's a URP default particle as well, right? Yeah, so if I use the default particle systems, it doesn't light up as well as if I were to use the additive material. So this is why the additive material is used. Where is it again? Seems like it's missing. Additive materials here. So if I use this, you see it brightens up. So it looks more like a particle system. And of course, when you have different particles, you get different effects. And you can also animate them by assigning different sprites to it, see? And then you get some kind of an animation here, which is pretty cool. So with different particle effects here, you can see that you can create many different kinds of effects that are going on. And the additive particle makes everything look bright, which is always a fantastic thing. So the first thing you want to do is to import the sprites. Second thing you want to do is to create an additive particle material. This will vary based on what pipeline you are using. So if you're using the URP, you will have to go to universal render pipeline, and then after that particles, and then unlit. Otherwise, you can just go to particles and then standard unlit. And what you want to do then is that once you get the additive particle, you want to make sure the setting is changed to additive, and then transparent if available, and then color mode is additive as well. This will make your particle system appear in a more organic way, and it's also very bright. So you want to create a material for additive, and you want to create a material for subtractive as well. Subtractive would be like this. So subtractive particle. And then same thing, you want to find the appropriate particle shader. Depending on what pipeline you're using, you want to just find the pipeline and then find particle textures. And then after that, usually I go for unlit. I think that's the best. Alright, and then this time, this again is transparent. And this would be blending mode is additive, that's fine. Color mode is subtractive. And then once I have a subtractive material, you will see things will act a little bit different. We just assign any sprite to it, default particle sprite. Okay, you will see that subtractive materials are black. So this is great for if you want to create black effects, because normally you can't create black effects with additive material. With anything that you create, can't be black. Yeah, it can only be a bright color. So they can only be a white color, but if you assign a subtractive material to it, it inverses the color. So with a subtractive material here, you see this becomes the reverse of the color, which means that if you color this white, this becomes black. Yeah, this is very important. Subtractive materials are very important for creating effects like this. So the basis of any, if you want to start creating particle systems, the basic thing you want to do, let me just recap, is to import a particle system. Import a bunch of particle sprites. After you import them, create two different materials: additive, subtractive. Additive is for when you want to create effects that are bright, like this. And then subtractive is for when you want to create effects that are black. And if you assign the right sprite, you can very clearly see the effect of that. Okay, so let me just show you additive again. So this is just a ball of energy, right? Maybe let me see if I can find anything else. Okay, let me just configure this particle effect a little bit so that you can see the effect of this. I'm gonna do a size over lifetime, and the lifetime here, I'm gonna randomize it to be a way shorter value. So 0.5, 1. And the size of this will be 2 to 3. Maybe I'll just create a simplify effect just to illustrate this. Start rotation 0 to 180 degrees. And maybe a slight speed. So I want the fire to grow over time and then shrink. So something like this. And it goes down. And where's the color? Let's make color brighter. Let's make it say orange to make it look more fiery. And we want the speed to be a little bit upwards. And there is no shape. So this is a perfect demonstration of how the different particle textures will work. Just gonna add some animation to this as well. And one more here as well. Eleven, 12, 13. 11, 12, 13. And if I want to increase the particles, you'll see it just gets brighter. Oh, for particle systems, it's like that, you know. So you've gotta understand how to create the materials, and it's very easy to create particle systems. Okay, so with that, since I'm gonna cut this into a video, let me just explain what's going on over here. So I've just explained that you need to have three things when you want to start creating particle effects in Unity. The first thing is you want to find a suitable sprite sheet that has different patterns that you can use to create different kinds of particle effects. So if you're going to be following our tutorials, we will be using, so I'll be downloading this particle pack, and then from this I'll be creating a couple of videos. We will have a couple of videos on the channel that shows you how to create different kinds of particle effects. So we always start with just one particle effect pack, and then if you want to find one particle effect pack, if you want to find more of these particle effects, you can always go online and go to opengameart.com or some other places to try and find these particle effects that you can use, these particle effect textures that you can use to build different kinds of particle effects. So later on, when you follow the other videos that we have to create particle effects, you will find that this sprite sheet will come into use a lot of times. You want to make sure to find assets that are free so that if you create something commercial, you don't come under a lawsuit eventually. They don't come after you for using their assets inappropriately. So you can find these assets on Google as well, but again, make sure that they're copyright free, otherwise you may get into trouble if you commercialize your game. So once we have this sprite sheet here, what I've done is I've assembled the sprite sheet using a free sprite sheet packer just to combine everything into one asset. This is very important because this helps to make your sprites load faster and just spawn a lot faster. If you have 20 different files, they're gonna load a lot smaller than if you have all your sprites in one file, they are sliced up. So then once we have the sprite sheet that we can use to create different kinds of particle effects, you want to create two different particle effect textures. The way you create them depends on the pipeline that you are in. So for example here, if I'm using the regular built-in pipeline, in my material, what I'll be doing is going to particles and then standard unlit. And then after that, I want to make sure the rendering mode here is additive and color is additive as well. Okay, but because this project that I'm having right here is a URP project, so instead of creating a standard particle material which doesn't work, I have to create a material, but I have to use the URP version of the particle material. Okay, and then again it's unlit, and then just make sure that you set the right settings. So for URP and I guess for HDRP, you will have a similar set of settings. You will set the surface type to transparent. Blending mode is additive, and then render phase you can just leave it as this. Okay, color mode just always set to additive. So what you're doing here is finally you also have to assign a texture to it as well, like this, so that it appears. Okay, so whether you're using the default Unity built-in shader, or whether you're using the URP HDRP shaders, you will always have to create the material and then assign a texture to it. And for the texture, you can always just use the default particle texture like this. Okay, so once you have all of this set up, you also want to create one version. So I have one additive version, and then I have one subtractive version as well. Okay, it's the same process, it's the same series of steps, but this time instead of selecting additive, you want to select subtractive. That's really all the difference there is to it. Wherever you can select subtractive, you want to do it. Okay, so what is the purpose of this? Additive allows you to, let me just show you the difference between an additive material, a subtractive material, and a regular material. Okay, so if I'm using the default particle system material, regardless of what render pipeline you're using, whether it's URP built-in or whether it's some of HDRP, if I use the default material, which is, let me just get the default material here. If I use the default material, what I will get is, so here I have a fire effect. Okay, and you will see that a normal material, well, in URP it looks a little bit better. Let me just see if I can find something that maybe doesn't look so good. So let's say if I put in a sprite like this. Okay, this looks pretty decent as well. How about something darker? So like this. Okay, you will see that the colors don't really add up. It doesn't look very bright. And actually it looks worse if you use the standard Unity material. It looks worse. This URP, the particle effects look better even if you have black and white effect. Okay, so this is what a default particle looks like, and then this is what a additive particle looks like. So additive just makes the whole thing brighter. So, and in the built-in system, right, if you're using the built-in system, the default particle material looks even worse, which is even more important if you're using the built-in render system to create an additive material so that you can get effects like this, okay, where there's brightness involved. So then we also have the subtractive material, right? Why do we want to have the subtractive material? I think I just accidentally deleted it. So let me just recreate it. So this will be unlit. Transparent. Blending mode is alpha is fine. Oh, sorry. This should be render pipeline, and then this should be particles, unlit. And then here I can select color mode. Here is subtractive. Right, so when I set the color mode here is subtractive, of course, as usual, I have to assign a default particle texture to it. Doesn't matter what this file is, as long as you have something there. That's the important thing. And let me just call this subtractive particle. Okay, so subtractive particle effects are for when you want to have black. Because if you notice, by default, if you use the additive or the regular particle effect, you are not able to set something with black. So if I black this out, doesn't really work. See that? So I can't really set the start color to black for additive materials. For default materials as well, I cannot set this to black. So let me just show this to you. Oh, we can do that for URP. So then it means that we don't have to do all of this all of this additive subtractive stuff already. Okay, so the subtractive particles will have a similar effect here. Blending mode here, it didn't work. Pre-multiply. Multiply. Okay, so the universal render pipeline is a little bit different. The way that it works. Subtractive particle. Let me just double check what is the default particle system. So the default one is sprite lit default. If I use that, does it work? So if I just sprite, or say sprite unlit, does it work? Set the color, so it's sprite unlit, and I set the color to black. So this does work for URP actually, but there is a bit of blackness to okay, there we go. So if you use the default particle texture, the colors may not always look the best, even if I say put an orange over here. Doesn't really work, right? So you see the black borders over here. And then when I change this to additive, this works better. And then subtractive is for turning things black, which isn't always necessary. Okay, since if you use the default particle system, this still works pretty okay. But if I use the default lit, or like the sprite lit, either the sprite unlit or the sprite lit, I think both have their problems, right? Yeah, and the problem is that the blackness on the edges. So the additive particle effect we'll use a lot, and we'll see how we can use this particle sheet here to create different kinds of attack effects. So here we have this little fire effect over here, which looks great. Let's create an attack effect. So attack is very simple to do. So for the attack effect, what you want to do is just okay, it depends on what kind of attack you want to have. I will just start with something simple. I will create an attack effect using this star over here. And this means I'll have to create a new particle system. Over here, and what you want to do is you want to have the particle system be a burst. So this means that you want to zero out the speed. And the lifetime itself, you can set this to a very small value. And why is it moving around now? It's because there is emission. So it spawns itself over a range of shape. Spawns itself over a range of possible shapes. And you can see this when I increase the speed. So if I set the speed to 0 and I disable the shape, you'll see everything will appear in one spot, which is what we want. And then we also want to turn on shape over lifetime. Sorry, size over lifetime. And this will give you this flash over here. And then we want to set the rate over time to 0 and add a burst. And then what this does is that this will give us something like this, which is close to what we want now. And I'm just going to set the burst to 4. Just something simple. Next thing we're going to do is to change this to additive. If we use an additive texture for this, yeah, and you will see something nice starting to happen, and then we will do a texture sheet animation. And then here I'll just drop a couple of different textures to it. So this will be a sprite, and then we will just drop a star like that. And then what you'll see here is you get something like this. It's like a little flash, right? Okay, and the good thing about this is that because we're using additive texture, the black doesn't show up. The black edges don't show up. But if we use the regular texture, the black edges will show up. And then now we just have to randomize the start rotation like this. So 0 to 180. Yeah, and then now we have just this little cool burst. We can change the color to different colors. And then you see now you get a very simple heat effect. And you can use different stars and you can see what you like the best. So for example, if you don't like the way this looks, you can just change this to something else and then you can see whether this looks better. So particle effects are really easy to create and they're pretty cool to make and play around with. So this look more magical, right? Whereas the sharper edges will make it look more solid. And then next thing you might want to do also is to randomize the size. So now that we have this little flash here, you can just randomize the size a little bit or randomize the coloring a little bit. So I can reduce the alpha, and then this will cause the whole thing to look lighter. Yeah, and I can also randomize the size. Where's the size? So maybe 0.5 to 1, then you get more irregular shapes. Let me try a different texture. This is let me try the rounder one. Do we have other effects that we can use about this? See that? This looks pretty decent as well. So we can combine two effects together. So for example, here we have just the stars, right? Like this. And then we can also supplement this. So this is a heat effect. And then we can just supplement this with another effect. And then this can be the same as the previous heat effect. Okay, so let me just duplicate this. And this can be the shockwave. So whenever you have particle effects, you usually have multiple layers to them. So then this, I will replace the sprite here with the circled one, so this one. So by combining both of them together, you will see that Now the effect looks more potent. Yeah, so whenever you hit something, you can always use this effect. Or you can try to find another shockwave effect as well. So let's say if this is maybe it's too attention grabbing, you can always change the shockwave to something else. See that? So then we have a lot of different configurations that we can choose from in terms of how we want to animate our hit effect. Can always use this half circle as well, like this. I just feel like the stars are not very satisfying, so you know, we can maybe find another different effect for the hits. I don't think the stars really work that well. It looks very magical. Or we can just use slashes as well. But for the slashes, we cannot randomize anything. How about this? This is reduce the burst over here. One, and set the opacity to maximum. Hey, this actually works pretty well as a slash effect. Shockwave, let's try it in the smoke. And let's also do a change shockwave to something else. Like say to spring. Like this. And for the hit effect, maybe make this less bright. Or I can use the standard material, right? Actually, I don't have to use the sprite. I don't have to use the other ones. Default sprite, default particle. Funnily enough, I can't find an effect that I agree with. Maybe if I increase the count. This is not sharp enough, but then the sharp ones don't look very good as well, you know. This looks so magical. This looks a bit better. And we have a shockwave. And the shockwave can be just one of these circles, right? And I can afford to have the shockwave be a lot lighter colored. Maybe I should start from looking for references on Hollow Knight.
When receiving damage in receiving damage,
Trying to catch the fit screenshot.
when receiving
Slow this down.
when receiving damage in Hollow Knight, the game pulls from.
Okay, you know what? I think for the particle effects, I'm gonna have to do a whole bunch of recordings on these effects, and I think that can help us to create more accurate representations of them. So what I'm gonna do here is for the next 20 minutes or so, I'm just gonna find some references, and then from there I'll create some videos and then to show you how these particle effects are created. So like first,
When receiving
for Hollow Knight.
damage in Hollow Knight, the game pauses for a moment before returning to normal. This will give the player a clear indication that they've received damage. I'll be creating a similar effect that you can use in your game with just 2 scripts. To start, I've set up a scene with my animated character, along with a controller and a sprite.
What do we have at the moment? Game. We have a whole bunch of balls up here, right? Hey, tell you guys what, I'm gonna stop this stream here, and I'm gonna plan for creating some videos on how to add particle effects to our Metroidvania series. And so from the process of adding these particle effects, I'm going to be able to also find other areas of improvements for the Metroidvania series. And by probably next week, I should be able to chart out a brief direction of where we are moving towards. As for the creation of the part 11 video, I think it's going to take some time, so I'll keep you guys updated. I'm gonna just go stop the stream now and just get some recordings so I can get some references to the particle effects that I'll be creating. We didn't do a lot today, but I think we still took a step forward, and I think that's great. So thanks for joining the broadcast, and thanks for your support as always. I'm glad you guys enjoy the videos. I'll see you all next week for the Vampire Survivor stream on Thursday.